Welcome to the 2026 Free Speech Center's celebration of journalism. Rooms like this one are how this work continues. Many of you will know Najib Assil. Until August 2021, he was head of current affairs at Afghanistan's largest private TV network. He now makes his home here in Canada and serves on the board of the Canadian Association of Journalists. The Free Speech Centre, which he founded 3 years ago, is a testament to what journalists do when they refuse to let circumstances silence them. It is my pleasure to invite to the stage the founder and executive director of the Free Speech Centre and the visionary behind tonight's event. Please join me in welcoming Najib Assil.
Good evening, everyone, distinguished guests, journalists, friends of free media, and members of our community. On behalf of Free Speech Centre, it's a great honor to welcome you to our third annual event, celebrating journalism and the cause of press freedom around the world. Tonight, we are very happy to bring so many highly respected guests. We have many exiled journalists in this room. They came to Canada from Asia, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and South America. We also have here Canadian colleagues, journalism students, scholars, media organizations, and politicians. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming and for supporting us. Someone who reports the news in situation of war, censorship, repression, and violence is a brave person. They do not get into exile easily. Many leave only after a new and sudden dangers to themselves and their families, not just because their lives are in peril at work, but because they are in peril in their homes. But crossing a border often does not mean safety. Repression can follow. Online harassment, digital surveillance, blackmail, targeting of family members, and legal persecution. All the same, many of these colleagues continue their reporting from exile. As a journalist, we need to work together to build awareness, boost resilience, enhance our collective capacity to respond. A few days before we celebrated World Press Freedom Day, the theme this year is about shaping future at peace. Peace cannot be built on silence. Peace is built on truth, accountability, and trust. That's why protecting exiled journalists is not only about protecting individuals, it's about protecting the condition of peace. We need to do more, and today's event is a chance for youth to think about how we do it. Over the past 3 years, Canada has become home to a growing number of exiled journalists. I'm one. And we are all grateful to Canada for the safe haven. But the reality is many of these journalists, people with master's degrees, international reporting backgrounds, and great talent are struggling simply to survive in Canada today. I believe they deserve a chance to continue their vocation, and the world deserves the benefits of their work. We respectfully call on Canadian government, media support organizations, nonprofits, and universities to stand with and support these journalists. When we speak about diversity and inclusion in journalism, exiled journalists must see also themselves reflected in Canadian newsrooms. Over the past 3 years, the Free Speech Centre has built a network connecting hundreds of exiled journalists and media workers across Canada, Europe, and Asia. Where regimes try to silence, the Free Speech Centre's mission is to amplify, and we do it entirely on volunteer basis. We organize events like this. We give workshops, guidance on mental health, professional development, and safety. We work day and night to stay in touch with journalists in Pakistan, Iran, and Turkey after fleeing persecution. Now, tonight is also about hope. I'm proud to be a board member of the Canadian Association of Journalists, where we discuss these issues at length. Today, I'm very pleased to share that at the Canadian Association of Journalists, we are launching the Exile Journalists Caucus. My colleague, Brent Jolie, the president of Canadian Association of Journalists, will speak more about this initiative later and will explain how exile journalists may benefit from it. Before I conclude, I would like to extend my deepest thanks to Liz Doucette, Haroon Najafizadeh, Nahla Ayad, Jennifer Hollett, as well as to all our panelists and to our wonderful MC, Natalie Turvey, and of course to our board members, volunteers, and community supporters. They are giving us their time and their presence mean the world. My sincere thanks also to the Globe and Mail Foundation, the Canadian Association of Journalists, the Canadian Journalism Foundation, Journalists for Human Rights, the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, the Walrus, and the Mouch TV for their contribution and support in making this event happen. And finally, once again, thank you to all of you for being here tonight, for standing with journalists in exile. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Najib. The work of the Free Speech Centre is vital, and not just for the journalists it supports, but for all of us who believe in what journalism is for. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's feature conversation. We often talk about press freedom in very broad terms, like a value, a thing, a principle that is worth defending. What we don't always do is sit with what it actually looks like to report from inside a war, to tell the stories of ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, to keep going back. Liz Doucette has kept going back to Afghanistan, to Gaza, to Ukraine, to dozens of conflicts over 4 decades as the BBC's chief international correspondent. Her book, The Finest Hotel in Kabul, is a people's history of Afghanistan told through the voices of those who lived it, and it is shortlisted for the 2026 Women's Prize for Nonfiction. It is journalism at its most human. Tonight, Liz will be in conversation with someone equally committed to putting journalism in service of understanding. Nahla Ayad is the host of CBC's Ideas, a foreign correspondent of 30 years and one of the most incisive voices in Canadian journalism. She has reported from the American invasion in Iraq in 2003 to Russia's invasion of Crimea and to the refugee crisis in Europe. She brings both integrity and deep empathy to her journalism. I can think of no better pairing for tonight's feature conversation. While Nahla and Liz make their way to the stage to our applause, let's watch a short video highlighting Liz Doucette's work.
Listen, look at the tracer fire in the air. The guns are going off. You can see the streams of red light.
She is the BBC's chief international correspondent, a senior presenter, a Canadian and proudly Acadian, an officer of the Order of Canada, a recipient of an Emmy, a Peabody, and so many more awards, and a firm believer in a proper brew. Liz Doucette began her reporting career in Africa. In her 20s, living in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, she spent 5 years reporting across the continent, freelancing for the BBC and Canadian outlets. Her Acadian English caught attention in Britain.
You just feel the excitement here and the anticipation and relief.
Listeners wrote in asking, where is Liz Doucette from? A fair question. The answer, it turns out, was exactly where she needed to be. Soon she became a full-time foreign correspondent. In 1988, she was posted to Kabul, Afghanistan. She covered the withdrawal of Soviet troops, the beginning of a lifelong connection to the country.
I always say, no one comes to Afghanistan once.
Liz spent a year living in the Intercontinental Hotel, Kabul. She's returned many times since, reporting on defining moments in Afghanistan's modern history. Beyond journalism, she serves as a trustee of Friends of Ashiana, supporting children working on the streets to access school and safety. In 2025, she published her first book, a history that reads like a novel, telling Afghanistan's story through the lives of those who passed through one remarkable hotel. More recently, Lise Doucette has been reporting from Tehran. From the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, to the Arab Spring, to the war in Syria, to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, she is a trusted voice at the center of the world's most consequential stories. Please welcome to this Free Speech Center event, Lise Doucette.
Welcome home. Sempre trop. And thank you very, very much. I'm really just a girl from small town in New Brunswick. So it's all a bit tour. You know, I always say New Brunswick is sort of like the Kunar of Canada. You know, this hard corner of Afghanistan, no one pays attention to it unless something explodes. So it's a huge honor for us to be honored like this.
This year, classic Lise. Always humble, always hardworking. Congratulations on your incredible work in Tehran, both before and after the conflict. I imagine you must be exhausted. It's a lot of work. Tehran is going through a difficult time, is coping not just with war, but with terrible inflation, with an economic crisis, and with the digital shutdown that has been there for months. And I wonder just what it was like for you to work there following the beginning of the conflict.
It's great to be with you, Nala, and to all of that tribute which was made to me. Could you really put you in there instead of me? So it's a great pleasure to be with you here on stage and to be here with so many of our friends tonight. The situation in Iran was very difficult before the war which began on February the 28th, and still, despite the shaky ceasefire, shows no sign of ending completely. And the people of Iran are suffering enormously. As a BBC correspondent, I wasn't able to go to Iran for many years because of their opposition to our great BBC Persian service. We only recently started getting visas. It is difficult to get visas. We are under scrutiny the whole time, under scrutiny inside Iran, under scrutiny outside Iran. But I have to say that when I went there in February, just after the extraordinary protests, which had been put down with lethal force, causing thousands of deaths, I was really stunned by how raw the emotion still was when we would go into the streets and ask a very genuine question, but you were never sure how free people felt to speak. But when we went out without a camera, just to go out and speak to people and said, what's the main worry on your mind? People would start crying, people would get angry, and the emotions kept pouring out. And so you still felt that Iran has gone through 2 wars within 2 years. They've had this extraordinary moment, and the pain is still there. And when we went in during the ceasefire, it was the war which was on people's minds. And this time, when I would say, well, what is the main worry on your mind? In February, the inflation had been 60%. Now it's said to be 72%. 1 million jobs have been lost. The repression is even greater. You can feel the visible security presence on the streets. There is the longest digital blackout, one of the longest in history. And since we're here talking as journalists, the report for Sans Frontières says that Iran is 177. Well, the boss of they can't even have the tools to be a journalist. It's very difficult to be a journalist in Iran unless you're working for state media. But what Iran has in abundance is the courage of its people. Those who still send messages to the BBC Persian service, to Harun is here, Iran International. He knows that even with the digital black book, people have access to VPNs. People who, with very small minority, have access to the Starlink terminals. Elon Musk company do take great risks because they want their story to be told to the world. But of course, that's not enough. And there is not just the digital blackout, there is now the criminalization of sending videos to foreign media. The warnings have been given to those who go out and want to film that they could be prosecuted, they could be treated just like the enemy. So the situation in every aspect is getting much worse.
I do want to address that point because despite the fact that you weren't going in as often as you'd like before, you have been going to Iran for quite a long time. Could you speak a bit more just how specifically this conflict has affected the ability to do any kind of journalism, whether it's covert or even working as a journalist in the country for reporting for the people there?
I mean, this is perhaps a good audience to discuss this. For a journalist like myself, and I'm not the only one, for the journalists to go to Iran, we come under criticism. There are those who say, you shouldn't be going. You shouldn't be going because of the way Iran treats journalists inside the country. You shouldn't be going because of the persecution. Harun knows about it. The journalists from Iran International who've been harassed, who've had death threats, who've had intimidation, journalists from the BBC Persian service. But we still go because I think for all the restrictions, every time I go to Iran, and this is the view of the others who go, is that the value of face-to-face, on-the-ground journalism, even with all the restrictions, you come away knowing more about the situation on the ground, about what people think, and that is invaluable because this is one of the main stories of our time. And the closer you can try to get to the story, that's what journalism is all about. It's the same situation for journalists who go to Russia, journalists in China, journalists now working in areas controlled by Hezbollah in Lebanon, journalists in Gaza, where the measure between life and death, the number of journalists who've lost their lives because they want to tell the story to the world, the extraordinary courage of so many journalists living in these sorts of environments. So we still go, and still believe it is important to go, notwithstanding the very real difficulties of doing so.
Your approach is really interesting because it spans such a large, both time and space. And I'm curious, as you've watched the pendulum swing over the years about press freedom, what you're seeing that's new and concerning in the way press freedom is viewed around the world.
Well, we just heard some of the figures. The figures are numbing. The figures are going in all the wrong directions. I mean, one of the, we're mentioning the latest report, both of the Committee to Protect Journalists and also Reporters Sans Frontières. In 2002, 20% of the world's population lived in countries where press freedom was described as good. That figure is 1%. I mean, that's stunning that we live in a time where, the Dickensian way, that we live in the best of times and we live in the worst of times. The number of journalists last year, CPJ said more journalists had been killed just for doing their job than at any other time in history. The number of journalists in Gaza alone killed by Israeli actions are more than the First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War put all together. These are really, really dangerous times for journalists. And yet, here we are here tonight, brought together because we believe in the power of journalism. And I believe, for those of us who are either involved in journalism or those of us who support independent journalism, because it is such a fundamental pillar of the society that we want to live in, you have to hold on to those moments of hope. If you would have asked 2 years ago whether the Assad regime would fall, you'd say, no, it's never going to fall. And here it is. It's not perfect, but there's a new society, and Syria on the RSF index of journalism, it's got up 36 places. Journalists can now work in Syria. There's still difficulties and dangers, but it is a world different from what the way it was under President Assad. Hungary. Years ago, I went to Hungary and I met the diminishing number of independent journalists working in a country where Viktor Orban had weaponized all of the institutions of democracy. He was buying up all the media, and the journalist said, it's so dangerous for us. And then suddenly, the Orban era is gone. Look at Canada, where if the election had gone a different way, there could have been the defunding of the CBC. Now, Mark Carney, I don't know if he's made good on that promise, to put 150 million into the CBC to make it statutory. Not yet. Not yet, but he's promised. But you have to, many of these are small examples, but they tell us that even when things look bad, that things can turn around. And it's not for us to give up and to give in.
Well, that's easier said than done when you see world leaders openly attacking journalists and making them fair targets. Without naming names, there are several Western leaders who do exactly the same publicly on a regular basis.
Well,
President Trump, Russia, and others.
To say,
Sure. What's the pushback? Who is best positioned to make that pushback? And isn't a fight? Is that what it is?
I think that journalists we're in the fight of our lives. I think there's nothing less than a battle for independent journalism. It is an existential battle for journalism. Hence the importance of gatherings like this, hence the importance of all these foundations here. We have to believe in the power of journalism. And I know in Canada, where it's not just fighting against, it's not the problem here of an authoritarian regime. It's the problem of diminishing resources, hundreds of local media outlets. I don't need to tell you, far more than I do about that situation. It's always been tougher in Canada. I work for the BBC. We're just about to have 15% cuts, which for us is huge. But yet we still have the resources in order to be able to do the journalism that we think is important.
I'm curious where you think the conversation about press freedom goes when we do talk about not just the freedom to do journalism, but the ability to do journalism. If we have fewer bureaus, we've seen what's happened in American outlets, we've seen some of that here as well, foreign bureaus shutting down, money not available. So where does the conversation about press freedom, when really we're fighting to ensure that the industry survives?
Yes, and on top of that, artificial intelligence. Today, I got an email saying, it was in the Washington Monthly, the article title was Independent Journalism and the Threat Posed by Artificial Intelligence. And because it was on my deep sea computer, which is also connected to artificial intelligence, that Copilot, which was kind of AI, said, would you like me to summarize this article for you? I said, no, I'm going to summarize it myself. I don't need artificial intelligence to do my work. We can't sugarcoat it, nada. But on the other hand, and again, everyone here tonight, these organizations, all of us are saying, yes, it is very hard, but we have to try to find a way through. Because it doesn't need saying, even here in Canada, that if we let it go, a pillar of the society, the political system, and society we hold dear will be removed. And every blow to journalism is a blow to democracy. And that's just not a platitude. I think the more people have to work together, and if I mentioned a few cases where journalism seemed to be almost dead and buried, and now it's coming back.
There are those who say that it is an opportunity at the moment. Maria Ressa, who's a friend of yours and mine, a journalist who's won the Nobel Prize, talks about the reinvention of the world order as us standing on the rubble of the old world. And she says that I guess she poses the question to all of us of how do we ensure that as we build this new world order, that press freedom is actually a pillar of that. How do you and I help make that happen?
Maria Ressa, and I hope everyone here is familiar with Maria Ressa's work. When she rightly just received one of the world's greatest prizes for her work, is when I read the investigations that she'd done, what it was like being a journalist under Duterte in the Philippines, it was like a light bulb went on. And I thought, we use this expression, the canary in the coal mine, the kind of rigorous research and brave work that she did in the Philippines was an example to all of us, because she was predicting what was going to happen in that juncture between an authoritarian regime and also the power of social media and the price you pay in trying to take on both. Brilliant work. And she has the stage, but there are many voices like that. What can we do? I mean, you and I are here tonight. We're talking about this. Everyone here who's come tonight, we have to believe in it. And we have to, it's a question of money. We need more people. Unfortunately, Jeff Bezos is now basically selling out the Washington Post. He sacked so many of the foreign correspondents. But you have to believe that there are others out there. And you do hear reports of people buying up social media. Not enough. People buying up local newspapers. I remember when I was looking at the situation in Hungary, a Canadian philanthropist got in touch with me and said, we know that Viktor Orban is buying up all the media. We want to create a fund to buy up the media ourselves. It was called media capture. We want to go in there and do it before he does. So I'm constantly reminded, perhaps not enough, but as long as there are some dots to connect, then I think you cannot stop looking for the dots.
Just a couple of more questions. I'd be remiss, of course, not to ask you a question about your wonderful, wonderful book. First of all, congratulations for adding author to your list of accomplishments.
To you now as well.
You have had a long-standing connection, special connection to Afghanistan. And of course, you would know, as many people in this audience would know, that there was a time where journalism flourished in Afghanistan. And I wonder if you take us back to the influence of that generation in service of explaining why it's so important to have press freedom, just what that did for the next generation of people in Afghanistan when there was a free press there.
I don't want to speak for Afghans. In this audience are some dear friends who count among the finest journalists in Afghanistan. And I will say this, and Wilfred Najafizadeh was the one who said, don't call us exiled journalists, even though there's this great initiative to talk about maybe journalists in exile is okay. But they are still journalists. And of course, Hamoum is here also in the front row. Many colleagues are here now. And I was always really so impressed when immediately after the fall of the Taliban, and when the international community started engaging with Afghanistan, how young Afghans who'd missed a whole generation of technological inventions. In 2001, there wasn't even a national telephone network anymore. You had to go to Pakistan to make a telephone call. There were no phones, there should be no cell phones, and they jumped over that technological development immediately to the next stage. And the way they embraced technology, whether or not they had much formal education or not, it was truly inspiring. And it's been said many times, and I'll say it again here tonight, is that it was one of the, if not the top success story of Afghanistan. And I want to believe that it's not for nothing. The fact that Najib and Soraya have been these driving forces behind the setting up of the Free Speech Center, the fact that new Afghan television and online networks have been set up in exile, that is a direct result of the kind of development that went on in Afghanistan. Of course, none of us would have wanted what happened to have happened. If only Afghans were working in Afghanistan. Walid is here. He was working in the occupied West Bank. That, of course, we all want to be working, where we want to work, not being forced to leave our country. But it wasn't for nothing. And it was truly, truly stunning success with a bit of help from the international community, and then it took off. The BBC, when I lived in Afghanistan, the BBC was by far the most watched, at that point, there was listened to network in Afghanistan. I will proudly say that Afghan networks left us in the dust of Afghanistan because they, hundreds of television, radio, and online networks were set up. And Afghans were telling their own stories, which is as it should be. And they worked with international journalists, and journalism was the better for it. And certainly Afghanistan was the better for it. The world was the better for it.
The world was better for it. As a final question on a positive note, we are here to celebrate journalism and to raise up the cause of press freedom. What are your thoughts to people who are here, exiled, outside the countries in which they'd like to report but are doing it here? What are your thoughts about their predicament, and what, if any, advice you would provide?
Oh, I would want to stay away from the word predicament, although there are moments we all have some days where the world seems really dark and foreboding, and there are other days we wake up and we see possibilities. I think journalism is much stronger the more journalists we have from different backgrounds, from different ancestries, different experiences, who can ask different questions. I always say journalism is defined by the questions we ask and the questions we don't ask. And the facts, actually, no, journalists, maybe someone will come up with a better word than journalists in exile. They are journalists who have the great gift of having two homes. They have the home that they left behind. In many cases, they were forced to leave behind. And they have a new home, and I hope it is a home which has welcomed all of you with open arms and made you feel at home. And with these two different experiences, that you will ask questions that you or I, Nala, as well, of course, you had your two ancestries as well, as your first book so eloquently described. And many Canadians have many ancestries, but they will add a different kind of richness to the reporting here. And of course, journalists can also, if you look, there was, again, this AMO Television has this great new cult program with the Globe and Mail feature called Johnny Gap, he's the soul of the corner, Johnny Gap. Thousands of people calling in. So because journalists are based outside the country, it doesn't mean that they don't have a foothold inside their country. And I think in the world in which we did, the technology we have, that I think sometimes we can blur the differences. So I would just say, keep going, and we'll be there with you.
What a wonderful place to end. Thank you very much, Lise Doucette. What an honor. What an high honor. So great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nala Ayed and Lise Doucette, for joining us this evening and for making this a conversation we can all benefit from. Lise, you're not going anywhere. We're going to keep you on stage. There's something we'd like to do. The Free Speech Center's members and supporters include many journalists from Afghanistan, the FSC Afghan Journalist Caucus. As you've heard, Lise Doucette's connection to Afghanistan is long and profound. In recognition of Lise's work, the Afghan Caucus would like to present her with a certificate of appreciation. Representing them will be Saeed Salahuddin, Nida Kargar, Bahishta Argand, and FSC board member Margaret Kochan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz,
Thank
for
you.
everything.
Thank you.
You deserve more than this
No,
because you are in the
I
hearts and minds of Afghans and those who have followed your news and your coverage, both locals and politicians, because you have done a great, marvelous job.
Oh,
You are in the hearts.
Sorry, we worked
you have-
together in Afghanistan for many years.
Time passes so quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great privilege to have you here and be part of this group who have paid homage to you, to your good work. Yeah, you're in the hearts and memories of all Afghans and those who have worked with you and have covered, followed your news all over the place. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm just going to say a few words. And when people are honored with these kind of extraordinary distinctions, they always say, oh, so honored and so humbled. And of course they mean it, and I mean it. And they always say too, oh, I didn't really deserve it. And in my case, I really mean it. When Najib John and Sarai John first contacted me about this award, I said, no, 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 no. There are so many more of you here in this audience tonight who are fighting even harder much harder than I am, on the front lines of what Nala and I have just been discussing, what is this existential battle for independent journalism. And there are so many in Afghanistan, in Iran, in Sudan, in Gaza, in Mexico, in so many places the world over, who are literally putting their lives on the line. But you try saying no to Afghans. They don't take no for an answer. So I finally said, okay, I will come, because I wanted to be able at least to stand here, not just to speak for myself, but to speak for all of you. And of course, I realized that, the stage is, it's so high up and it's a little bit small. So it'd be really hard for all of you to come up here on the stage. But if I could, I would turn it around so that you are the main stage instead of me, so we could pay tribute to those of you in this audience who are from some of these organizations, to those of you who are journalists, so that we could all celebrate tonight what the good of what is being done in journalism. And if I could, for just a moment, just to focus, as we just did a little bit with Nala, one community in this audience tonight, because I think their story says so much about journalism today. And I will go back to 6 years ago, to 2020, where I and some of the journalists in this room, Afghan and non-Afghan, were spending most of their time. We were celebrating the successes of nearly 2 decades of international engagement. We were reporting and regretting some of the reverses of this international engagement with Afghanistan. And we were all too often mourning the losses of our colleagues. And yet, as we just discussed, there was always this sense that whatever the price, that the story of Afghan journalism was a stunning success story, that journalists did not flinch in the face of fire, that journalists did not hold back, didn't pull their punches in the face of hostile politics. Then nearly 5 years ago, the story changed. It's been nearly 5 years. And for others in this audience who also were forced to leave their homes and start new lives in Canada, it's been longer than 5 years. And for some of you, it's been shorter. But I would like to feel that tonight is not a night to dwell on the past. It may not even be the night to focus on the future. But it is a night for all of us to say, we are here. We are still here. And we are still here standing for journalism. Those of us who are still working as journalism, and those of you wherever you stand, believe in journalism because you believe in the kind of society, the political system, and the values and principles that we hold dear, which includes independent journalism. And tonight I'd like to say that we do it not just because of the courage of our conviction, but also what we see and feel and hear tonight, the strength of solidarity, and even more than that, the ferocity of friendship. And there is something else. And of course, Afghans have a proverb for it. Afghans, if you didn't know, have a proverb for everything. In fact, we sometimes think that Afghans invent proverbs. And it goes something like this. Jak růz, didi dost. Afghans know their answer. Ruzadega, didi brada wa kwahar. The first day we meet we are friends. The next time you meet, you are brothers or sisters. Dear brothers and sisters, or however you identify and see yourself, I'm very proud and very happy to be part of this family. Of course, I suppose I'd be the mother-in-law. And as you know, you can never get rid of the mother-in-law. Thank you very much.
I think we need one more round of applause for the incredible Lise Doucette. She is a gift to journalism. Now we turn to something even more personal. What happens when bearing witness puts you in danger? What happens when the story you're covering means you can't go home? What does journalism look like when it has to continue from exile? Our next segment, Sharing Notes from Exile, How to Report on Home When You Can't Go Back, brings together 4 journalists who have lived these questions and who have found ways to keep working, to keep reporting, to keep making an impact from the new countries of residence. Moderating this conversation is someone I have a lot of admiration for. Jennifer Hollett is the executive director of The Walrus, Canada's Conversation. Before that, she spent years as a journalist and broadcaster at Much Music, CBC, and CTV. She's moderated Girls G20 summits in Paris, Mexico City, Moscow, and Sydney. And she brings a genuine curiosity to every conversation she has. This panel couldn't be in better hands. Welcome, Jen. I invite our panelists to please take your seat on stage as I introduce you. Haroon Nazafida is a veteran Afghan journalist with more than 25 years of international broadcast experience. He currently serves as Director of News at Afghanistan International, one of the most influential exile media outlets in the world, reaching millions of Afghans despite censorship, signal jamming, and ongoing threats. Welcome. Arzu Yildiz is originally from Turkey. She's an award-winning investigative journalist whose work includes reporting on unresolved murders of Kurdish businessmen and the illegal supply of weapons to Syria. She is the author of 4 books, and her voice on exile and censorship continues to carry enormous weight. Anderson Busquin is an Ecuadorian investigative journalist whose reporting on organized crime and political accountability has put him at significant personal risk. He leads the network of free journalists in Ecuador and brings a vital Latin American perspective to tonight's conversation. And a familiar face to many of us, Walid Batrawi is a Palestinian journalist and a media development expert with more than 35 years of international experience, including senior roles at Al Jazeera, BBC World Service, and CBC. He serves on the board of the International Press Institute and today teaches journalism at Toronto Metropolitan University. This panel represents 4 countries, 4 very different experiences of exile, and 4 stories of courage and resilience. Welcome, Jennifer, Haroon, Arzu, Anderson, and Walid.
I am honored to moderate this conversation, Sharing Stories from Exile. I have had an opportunity to work in Afghanistan and Palestine, as well as visit Ecuador and Turkey. So I'm so curious to learn more about each of your stories, and hoping you can, each one by one, take us back to when you were last time back home, what you were working on, and why you had to leave. And perhaps we can start sitting next to me, Arzu.
I am not lucky to start it with me. Um, Last time I was working at the Taraf Daily newspaper. That was a dream team in Turkey where the Orkun Pamuk, Ahmet Altan, Evat Ünür authors, the were over there. Normally, I just, to cover the people's story, ordinary story. But our editor-chief, Ahmet Altan, said, our news meeting room, I just, the arguing with them because when they create the news, they didn't ask the people their opinion. For example, I create the news about you, but I didn't take your opinion or your defense on it. I said it's not ethic to to write you something, and they said they have a bias against us. They couldn't talk with us. I told them, okay, you can try, and then just write the sentence. They didn't answer our questions. After that things happen, he sent me the card. And our system is not like in Canada. And every courthouse has a press room. And also the police station has a press room. Here, police publishing their news by themselves. It's not object, right? We just see the news their side. Is
Statements.
yeah, just a statement, something that. But if you are witness over there, you can see the people how they treat. What is the reality, right? Turkey gives you space, but they didn't allow you to use that space, freely. But they open for these things. And then I was also the court reporter. We have a press room inside the court. I started to, to understand where I really am. Because the court shows you when you follow these kind of cases, and then you realize that you're living in a very different country than you think. And then you started to facing the reality. And also, for example, if I find the evidence like a prosecutor has or lawyer has or the victim or the anybody has, the suspect has, uh, I didn't write anything without seeing their face because it gives you some experience, right? I write lots of corruption stories and also one of them is a big one, December 17, included the four of the minister, son of our president, and even himself. And also, when I write the news, I started to become a news pro-government media. And also, I wrote the gun trade, illegal gun trade made by the Turkish intelligence agency, and after four of the prosecutor find them. And also they arrested the prosecutors. And government claimed that there is no guns inside the truck, that's just the food for the Syrians and the Turkmens. But I know the reality, but I couldn't able to, to find the evidence. And the prosecutors also couldn't speak because, they're officially banned. And also,
So you're doing this investigative journalism, right? You're really looking at power. And this is at a time where people just want the press release and they don't want you to ask questions.
And then when they arrested the poor prosecutor, also that they fired the search dog who found the guns and the Wahim. We didn't know what happened to him. And I able to find inside the course, they're hiring, the trial, their defense video. I try to publish it. I call lots of news channel. It is a reality of the media, I work all the time independent. I told them, hey, I have a video record.
So you're a freelancer trying to find a home for this.
Yeah, and then they scare from the government and publishing that I create a YouTube channel. And then I started to publish that videos by myself, and then prosecutors tell what really happened over there. They found the guns and they explain everything. For the first time, they find a place to make their voice heard, Just that following this, they started the investigating against me because they said she take the video record inside the court, something like that. I didn't join the first hearing. They took my custody from my kids
So I just want to repeat that. So when they took custody away from you from your own.
Yeah, yes, my own children. And also after that, but I never give up. I was the only person to following the death case. If I didn't go to the court, the four prosecutor became a voiceless. It is very hard. Somebody is innocent, but others doing a lot of, the illegal things. They arrested them in front of your eyes. It's very painful. I don't, during that time, it's like a man broke my heart. I feel I helpless, and also I think, I have a kids, but they have a kids too. I don't think it's a selfishness, it is our job responsibility. And then I follow each cases, I publish it. But when the July 15 paid coup attempt happens, they started to arrest a lot of people and put them in the detention center. They started to torture them. I just watched the video records. I couldn't believe it because the government agency just published the video how they torture the people, soldiers, academicians, doctors. I just take a couple of pictures from that and put to my Facebook account. Just write down. You cannot torture anybody because it's crime against humanity. At the same time, they issued the arrest warrant against me. Not that just journalism activity. I just remind them the rule of law internationally, but they are looking for the reason to arrest me. During the time, I have two kids. One of them 7 years old, the youngest one just 7 months old, and I didn't know what to do. I called my lawyer. I told him, let's go to the court. I can defend myself. I didn't do anything wrong. He said, are you stupid? I think you are a smart woman, but you are not. If we go to the court, I never see you again, maybe 8 years, 10 years.
So he advised against that.
Yeah, he said, just, find a place and hide over there.
Wow.
And then I find some place. It's very hard, but
You found a place to hide out?
Yeah, but for the first time, I left my kids with my parents. And then 3 days later, my ex-husband called me. They went the day of my mother-in-law house. At the same time, my sister-in-law has the baby just a month earlier than me. She was also the baby girl. And the police just looking for me in their house. They think the youngest baby belongs to me. They took the baby in the police station. They didn't believe it belongs to my sister-in-law. And I told them, tell the Arso if she wants to see the baby, come to police station. And when they provide the ID, they realize the baby. And I live 4 and 5 months underground life. I take my kids also with me. They never go to the balcony, and then we didn't open the window, something like that. But this is my way, not their choice.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to, just because I want to check in with you.
Okay, yeah. And then I made a decision, just escaping my country. I left them behind. I passed the Greece and Turkish border illegally and staying refugee camp there.
And then how did you end up here in Toronto?
Alone, going to Paris, New York. I had visa before, and then past the Montreal border, called the police, say, I came to your country illegally. Can you arrested me?
Please arrest me. Right?
Yeah, because I turned the police station, border police station. They didn't realize me, take a tour again and again. Finally, I remembered 911. Hey, I am around there.
You are determined.
Yeah.
Your journalism as well as finding Sweetie. Thank you for sharing that. If you don't mind passing the mic, a round of applause. What a story. Haroon, I'd like you to take us back to your work in Afghanistan. And I think we've heard a little bit about that time already.
Thank you, Jennifer. First of all, it's truly a pleasure to be among you. And thank you for coming this evening. I did not enter Canada illegally. I got a visa and came to Canada the day before yesterday for the first time.
Because you were coming from?
Because I was invited to come to this conference.
You're based in London?
Yes, yeah. I was truly touched that I was invited to Canada because of a number of reasons. First of all, I knew that we will have a wonderful audience as today. Secondly, I was brought into journalism by a Canadian, and that's no other than Lise Doucet. I used to work with her in the early days. And thirdly, which is also very dear to me, is the decision that Canada made to embrace a lot of journalists, including activists and civil society activists. That also includes my very close family. So it's a personal gratitude to Canada. So going back to your question, it was 2020 when I went to Afghanistan for the last time. And Afghanistan was preparing for a sort of peace deal between the government and the Taliban. And negotiations took place in Doha, in Qatar. So I was there to cover the negotiations with a lot of hope and fear. And since then, it was a number of steps that eventually led to the flops of the Republic in advance. And I won't be to Kosovo ever since. But luckily, thanks to that generation of Afghan journalists who were around, we launched a TV channel in London, which is now being watched in Afghanistan.
And when did that hope move to fear? You mentioned that.
Yes.
Oh, when did you know it would be unsafe for you and other journalists?
Well, the peace deal or the Doha Agreement or the collapse deal, whichever way you're looking at it, came into practice, but peace didn't come up. So the fighting continued to go on from one district to another, one progress to another. And eventually it came close to the capital city, Kabul, and that collapsed. Even while Kabul was falling to the Taliban hand, the journalists and the experts and the politicians were hopeful and fearful that we might agree to a new form of governance, even beyond that stage. But that was dashed away, and it didn't materialize.
Thank you for that. Anderson, you have a mic already in your hand. Take us to Ecuador, the stories you are working on. And in case you don't follow them on YouTube, you have your trademark glasses and hat on.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. It's really an honor to be here tonight. The last time I was in Ecuador, I was complaining about the weather, and
Really?
we read about that. And I work with my wife, who's just in front of me, and we run a TISA news outlet called the Bosta, which it has a broad audience in our country, and it specializes in covering politics, corruption, and organized crime. And Ecuador has become, in the very recent years, the most violent country on earth. It is not a story in the main headlines anywhere, but it is going on now in South America. We were the peaceful country, the most peaceful country in the Americas 15 years ago. 2 murders by 100,000 person. Now we are the most violent country in the Americas, of in 15 years. So in 2023, my wife and I, we were both of us protected witnesses of the state because of our reportings of organized crime. So our life and our family's life were in the hands of the state. We were protected by the police 24 hours, 7 days a week. And we decided to investigate the government, which was not the best decision or the cleverest one. Because
But it is the work.
yeah, yeah, but it's a bad system. You cannot put in your life in the hands of the people you are supposed to investigate. So we investigate the government, and we discover a, the biggest case of our careers, which was how the Ecuadorian government had a deal with the organized crime, especially the Benin mob, and how they relate themselves to make business along together the president and the Benin mob. So because of this, the president was impeached, and the elections were anticipated. And we discovered few months after that investigation that there was an official document of the national police of our country detailing how do they have to kill our kids and our family. And and that was the day we decided to come to Canada.
It's very similar to Arzu's story
Yeah.
with the intimidation and focus on the kids.
The only difference is I chose this place because I went to ChatGPT and I asked, which is the safest city in the Americas? With
You're not teasing us.
no. Which is the safest city in the Americas with nice parks because we were protected witnesses, so we were not allowed to go to parks, to the public spaces, and our daughters who were 5 and 7, they doesn't have ever go to a party for coming to Canada. And I asked ChatGPT, which is the safest city with nice parks ever? And it said, Opie. And I make it up.
Oh, wow. Well, that is a story. Thank you for those details. And one lead, take us back to the last time you were in Ramallah and what you were working on.
Well, last time I was in Ramallah, it was about 2 years ago, before I flew to Paris, working with Forbidden Stories on the Gaza project, investigating the targeting of Palestinian journalists in Gaza. Before October 7th, I was in Gaza a month before, and then before that also I was in Gaza in May 2023, and the irony is that I went there to train journalists on hostile environment. And I feel really ridiculous about it, about everything I told them, because, everything did not save their lives. But what happened in that particular training, because I worked in news for long, but then I decided that I'm too exhausted and not only covering, but being part of the story. You as a Palestinian, you are being part of the story, not necessarily because of the Israeli occupation, but also because of the internal conflict between Fatah and Hamas, the PA, and so on. So you are the story, okay? When Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, I have relatives who went missing for some time, and you have to stand in front of the camera. I worked for Al Jazeera English, and you just had to act that you're strong while you're not. So I went into media development, and I started working as a trainer. I worked with lots of journalists in the West Bank, in Gaza, and Arab work on a number of investigative reports. But I go back to May 2023 when I was held for 2 hours at the air checkpoint by the Israelis, and then I was allowed to go in. I barely made it to the venue where I was doing the training, so I spent like 4 hours doing the training, and then the next day I get a call at 6:30 in the morning saying, "Are we training today?" I said, "Yes, of course." I went to sleep. There was a wedding next to me. There was nothing. Life was normal. But the lady on the phone said, but the Israelis have started a new war. And they have killed 13 Palestinians, including 3 Islamic Jihad leaders. So everything is shut down. So I had to spend like 6 days in a hotel lockdown, you know, just one morning I found myself next to the bed. I don't know how, but apparently it was an F-16 strike, and I don't know how I found myself on the ground. Anyway, so I actually started realizing that, of course, it has always been a hostile environment. I started my work on the 17th of January 1991, which was the Iraq War. What was it called? Yeah, the Gulf War, but there was a name for the operation, the U.S. operation. Desert Storm. Yes, the Desert Storm. And since then,
Like right at the newsroom in the front row.
Yeah,
here,
I mean-
talking about your colleagues.
I'm looking at least, you know. So yeah, I mean, ever since there was a little hope between 93 to 2000 when, you know, the peace process started and so on. We started, you know, having hope, but then things collapsed again. And I remember the only time I smiled on TV when I was reporting for Jazeera was when Alan Johnston was released from being kidnapped in Gaza, you know. And on that day, I just said, you know, I was live and I said, yeah, I'm bringing you something positive, you know, otherwise it was all about conflict and so on. So yeah, I mean, the issue is, and I started realizing later on that this is a very dangerous environment. Exactly 4 years ago, when Shireen Abu Akleh was killed, a Jazeera correspondent who's a Palestinian US citizen, and nothing has happened until today, although the sniper who killed her was identified, but no one was held to account. But later on, with the Gaza war, I mean, by the time I left, it was March 2023, and was about 120 journalists killed. And I felt that this is, you know, if we don't do anything about it, it's going to haunt everyone. We'll be the next, you know, wherever we are. So, yeah, I mean, I end up being here in Canada on a super visa. My daughter is Canadian. But luckily, I don't know if it's lucky, if it's luck, if it's, you know, if it's bad, if it's good. I got a work permit under the special measures for Palestinians and Israelis. And this is how I end up working here. Again, one day I was going out of Gaza. You know, there are 3 checkpoints going out of Gaza. One checkpoint is code 44, and it's controlled by Hamas. So I was interrogated by Hamas. Then 55, which is the Palestinian Authority controlled checkpoint. I was interrogated by the Palestinian Authority. Then it was the 3rd checkpoint, the final checkpoint to go to the West Bank through Israel is the Erez checkpoint, which is controlled by the Israelis. So I was interrogated by the Israelis. So Palestinian journalists are not only subject, you know, to one kind of, you know, oppression or harassment. It's like 3, in addition to the society, in addition to everything else.
Building off that, historically, journalists wear, in a conflict zone, a vest that says press, or even to access a press conference. I already got an early answer to that question with your reaction there, Waleed. But a press pass to access a press conference, or, you know, even to get in situations. I want to know, back home for each of you, identifying yourself visibly as the press, does that protect you or put you in danger?
I haven't been to Afghanistan since the new regime in place.
But I know you work with colleagues or Rebecca.
It depends on the nature of the work you do.
Depends on the story?
Depends on the story, on your approach, and on your background. For example, if you are doing regime-friendly stories, Like if you're doing something about the so-called development, peace and unity, progress,
Meaning international development.
the achievements of the regime, then you are a lone approved journalist, right? And you're welcome. Sometimes you are treated VIP. But if you are following something like human-based journalism approach, and when you're doing your real job as if looking at the half empty of the glass, then you're not treated as all well. They unfortunately, since the new regime in Afghanistan, they have arbitrarily arrested and detained over 256 Afghan journalists. 7,000 Afghan journalists have been forced to go to exile.
In this room.
Yes, when you turn the friendly face here. The nature of storytelling has changed. Values, which were common in Afghan culture, turned into anti-values, and those who need to be accountable are now leading and telling the stories.
Okay, and Waleed, I saw your reaction when I asked the questions. The best.
Yeah, it's just so funny because where I lived and where I worked, it's it's a small country. So if you're a journalist, you're known to be a journalist for the authorities. So the Israelis knew, the Hamas party in Gaza knew, the Palestinian party knew, but then it's just so funny because if you're driving a car and you go into a Palestinian village, for example, and it's so complicated because even license plates are different, So Palestinian license plates are white, Israeli license plates are yellow. So we had to take Israeli license plates because of the checkpoints and so on. But the funny thing is that, you go into a Palestinian village, you put the press sign. You go into a settlement, you remove the press sign, Same applies to the kafia, So if you're driving an Israeli car through Palestinian roads, you don't want anyone to throw stones at you. You put a kafia. You go into a settlement, you take off the kafia. So but when it came to Gaza, and when I worked on the Gaza project, I spoke to many journalists who said that the press sign is identifying us from far, that we are journalists. The press sign has made us being not welcomed in many places, like in buildings, because journalists are being targeted. So in certain, when people started, being displaced, so journalists were asked not to be among the others. So they kind of gathered around hospitals, outside places that they thought they'd be protected, but nope, unfortunately.
Anderson, would you identify yourself as a journalist? Would that help you or hurt you?
Well, I cannot hide myself as a journalist because I'm really visible as a journalist in my country. But yeah, it kind of bad, but not for the good reasons.
But
Bad reasons are good.
how do you big calling on YouTube? Yes, you are very visible.
But no, definitely, if you cannot identify as a journalist, you'll be much safe and able to than the opposite. Journalists are being targeted, and what is even worse is that when we saw this kind of news 15 years ago with my wife, to say like, oh, poor Mexicans, or poor Colombians, oh, how rude it is to live in those conditions. And because the violence was so explicit, you can portray Mexico as a dangerous place and Colombia as a dangerous place to be a journalist. But what is happening in Ecuador is that the violence is not explicit. because they are not killing too much journalists, but they are making them silent. They are threatening so much that nobody is talking anymore about the organized crime or the mafia or the narco trafficking element. And that is even worse. Because,
Silencing.
yeah, because nobody is talking about it. Almost nobody.
We'll get the mic to Arzu. Back in Turkey, is it dangerous to identify as a journalist, or would a press pass help you in any way?
No, I didn't scare and I didn't need to help or I have courage to say anywhere. But when I came here, they put my name in the killing list and also announced me as a terrorist. If somebody providing more information about her, we can pay for something like that.
So what is a killing list in terms of?
One of the social media account, like a nationalist account, published a list, the killing list. I was the only woman journalist in that list, and then
You say it with a smile. You're like, hey.
yeah, it's good, They prove you are doing the correct things, If you love you did something wrong. We are not a singer, not the, movie maker. If you tell the truth, nobody loves you, very less people. And then they started to treat a couple of my colleagues who lives in Europe, but nothing happens to me here. But just a short story. Once upon a time, I write a story about one of the mafia group, organized crime organization.
There's some parallels.
Yeah, and one of them tried to call me each time. He tried to make me scared. He said,
Threaten you.
yeah, if you write this, I said, okay, I am here. If you want to meet me in person, I am waiting, something like that. And one of other colleagues and me sitting in the cafeteria, he comes over there. And he brings some of the flowers, something like that. And my colleagues asked him, why are you shooting me? Because the once upon a time, he wrote the news about him. He sent this out to guys, and then he shot his leg. And then he said, after that, you didn't write anything. But this woman, 100%, I am sure, gonna be right everything, And something like that. And one of the police chef also called me, do you know who I am? Why are you writing about me? I said, okay, I don't care who you are. Our life is short, And also here, I just want to add something more. For example, when we came here, they said Turkish journalists, and then when you came here, we just changed the land, Journalism is not belongs to any country anywhere. It's a skills. It's still with us, And I don't like people saying, when I came here, my journalism skills is still with me. I am doing Uber and the driving job 8 years. I know this country and how the people struggling. I speak each day with them, right? It's some reaction journalists should be held, and it's going with you,
Yes, you're absolutely right that you are a journalist in the two homes, as Lise mentioned. And a round of applause for these journalists on stage continuing this work. One final question. How can we, fellow journalists, media organizations, as well as the public here tonight, best support your work as you work here in Toronto, in London, in exile? What does that look like? But if I could have a brief answer, let's start with Wally.
Thank you. I think, first we need to be visible. There are lots of talents in this room, lots of talents in Canada. We come with lots of knowledge, local knowledge in our countries. For example, in Gaza, when I worked on the Gaza project, one of the editors asked me if I could get the name and the number of school principal where Samer Abu Datka, who's a Jazeera correspondent, cameraman, was killed. And I got the number in 5 minutes. So I think that's very important. And I take this opportunity to just briefly talk about the work I'm doing with Journalists for Human Rights. Is that, as part of this kind of initiative to make journalists visible, and I hear that the Canadian Association of Journalists and the Free Speech Center is also doing the same. So this is a good chance to join forces. We're trying to kind of make the newsrooms know about the talents that are here through different ways. I'm working on kind of needs assessment for both the journalists and the newsrooms. We need to understand what are the needs. Then also we're trying to come up with a directory and specialties of each journalist who is in Canada as well. So yeah, I think this is one way that we are trying to help journalists with. I mean, we're not going to bring jobs to journalists, but at least journalists should be able to contribute, should be able to access newsrooms. Newsrooms should know about who's who in Canada and the expertise that are there.
So this is a resource coming soon that
This
we
is
could use.
this is I'm working on with JHR, and actually we have a QR code, but for some reason we could not technically do that. That QR code leads you to a form. If you're interested in being part of that project, I reach out. I'll give you the QR code.
And I'm sure we can get it up on the Instagram for
Yeah,
Speak Center as well.
Of course. Yeah.
Excellent. Gonna move along here. Anderson, can you plug your YouTube channel, please, so we know how we can follow your work? Because I was watching it today and you have translation as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think it. Yeah. I'm gonna fail in this answer because I truly believe this is. I knew nothing about Canada before coming to Toronto, and this is such a great country to be in, and it's a place where everybody is willing to help you and make you feel comfortable. And of course, we do have a different story. We are able to do journalism from here to our country, and because of the news technologies and because of AI and social media. So we are now having more sources than before because we are now safe enough to tell some stories others cannot inside Ecuador. So this is a completely positive perspective of how exile ends up. But if I have to give an opinion on how we can make it easier for others not in the same situation, I will say it's not the professional side which is needed to be attended in my perspective. I mean, a journalist will find a way, always will find a way to make journalism, but because you survived something that is truly traumatic in your own country, I believe the main support should be or would be a mental health support, because you have been caring with. It's not the end to survive. Now you have to survive the survival. You have to survive yourself and your families and your kids and getting everything new language, new everything.
As well, it's also being part of the story.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Connecting journalists together, that's why it's so important the work and the job these organizations are doing, because connecting journalists with others, it make a huge positive impact.
Okay, thank you. I have a minute left. So Haroon, how do we support this work? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think journalists here play a critical role in flow information back to their home countries. I think they play a key role in democratization of their country, potential democratization of countries. I think they are a big challenge to the authoritarian governments, be it in Iran, Afghanistan, or in Latin America. I think they are now the main voice for their nations, because those living in the country are forced to censorship. And having said that, I believe the challenges coming to them in these countries, in the host countries, are also massive. It could be emotional, psychological, sometimes physical. I personally very worried about transnational repression, which can take any shapes and form, sometimes in close collaboration with some gangs. We've seen cases in London to some of our colleagues, but nothing can stop us from the commitment we have, and that is to try to tell the story of people, either from Kabul or from Toronto.
Yeah. Arzu, you're clearly unstoppable. Final word.
All the journalism organization in Canada support us, for myself. It's enough for me. And then they do whatever, you're asking for, not financially, but emotionally, for everything. Like a frenzy that I need. But only thing I realize that I don't like, sometimes then said they try to teach you all the time. For example, I cannot speak English very, very well.
Beautiful. You don't.
Yeah, but when you speak like that, they think you didn't know anything. This is just the expression. And then they should because our background. We start from zero, but we are not come from zero, We have knowledge, experience, lots of things. And I've been here almost 11 years. None of them asking me, hey, can you tell the investigative journalism? They all the time try to teach me. I give up, okay, I said, it's enough. Sometimes you ask me, hey, tell me this thing. Yeah, that kind of thing,
Well, on that note, a round of applause and thanks to the journalists on this case, their reporting, their expertise, their honesty, and their commitment to the work. Thank you all.
Hi, thank you, Jen. Thank you, Arzu. Thank you, Hareen and Emerson and Waleed. That was extraordinary, like each of you, and a reminder of what it costs to do this work and what it takes to keep going. Thank you for being here. Before we move to our final recognition segment, I'd like to invite someone we all value in Canadian journalism to the stage. It's Brent Jolly, the president of the Canadian Association of Journalists. The CAJ has a new initiative called Exile Journalist Caucus, and I'll ask Brent to tell us more about what that is and how journalists can benefit from it.
Thanks very much, Natalie, and thanks everybody for giving us a little bit of time here tonight. I think, frankly, Lise Doucette has done an incredible sales pitch already on behalf of this kind of a project. So I'd just like to really thank Lise and also thank Najib and everybody from the Free Speech Center who has put on this event. I had the pleasure of being here at the first one of these 3 years ago. And they have kept getting better and better. So please just give a round of applause for Najib and all the team at the Free Speech Center. The idea behind the Caucus for Exiled Journalists is one that is very much through osmosis. 3 years ago at the first Free Speech Center event, I remember talking to a group of people who were attending. Most were from Afghanistan, and the CAJ had started something earlier that year that gave free memberships to journalists who had come to Canada from Afghanistan. This was done in a spirit of understanding and reciprocity. We wanted to recognize the incredible work that Afghan journalists did to welcome and to support Canadian journalists while they were working and reporting stories in Afghanistan. And this was our opportunity to welcome them with open arms to Canadian journalism as well. The caucus that we have now, and I think what I'm taking away tonight is seeing all of the incredible work that everybody is doing. And I think this is certainly a rallying cry for all of the organizations JHR, CJFE, CJF, and the CAJ to work together to make sure that there are supports available and that the voices of journalists who have come from abroad and are now working in Canada are heard. Journalism is a very solitary endeavor, but I think what we need to do is be able to support each other more and more. That means better training, more advocacy work, professional development, peer support, and community. And I think what we're all trying to do here, and what we look forward to doing in the days and weeks after this event and into the future, is to make sure that we find space for everybody. Because, as I said 3 years ago, and I've said many times, this is about co-creating something, because everybody here belongs. You've come to Canada, and we support you, whether it's supporting your mental well-being, whether it's helping you build a network of contacts to succeed. We want to see you succeed, and we want to see you do well, and you do belong. So we look forward to making sure that this is a great opportunity for your development, and that we can do everything we possibly can to help you in your career paths. Thank you.
Now our evening is drawing to a close, but we are ending on a high note. This is a celebration. The Free Speech Center is proud to present 3 certificates of recognition for inspiring examples of work by journalists in exile. These certificates honor those who defend truth, accountability, and press freedom against all odds, and the FSC hopes to make this an annual tradition. As we move through each presentation, I want to invite you to pause for a moment and really take this in. Behind every story you're seeing here, there's not only journalism, but a journey of displacement, resilience, and the difficult choice to keep reporting when it would be easier to stay silent. Let's meet tonight's inaugural recipients and have a look at our first video.
A single event can change your life forever. In early 2018, Egyptian authorities arrested journalist Mustafa al-Assad. He was kidnapped from the street and forcibly disappeared for 16 days, during which he endured torture. He spent nearly 4 years in political detention before being released in July 2021, following diplomatic pressure and international advocacy campaigns. After his release, he fled to Beirut, where he worked as a correspondent for Al Arabi, Al Jadid, and as a non-resident fellow at the Tahrir Institute for Middle East Policy in Washington. From Beirut to Canada in March 2024. A few months after his arrival, he founded Red Work for Human Rights and Freedom of Expression. He's a journalism fellow at Massey College and a JHR contributing writer with The Walrus. Facing the challenges of exile, he saw in the hardship motivation to advocate for refugees and underrepresented communities, and freedom of expression through his writing. During this period, his work appeared in The Walrus, The Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, and others. Through Redword, he created a hybrid platform that operates both as a media outlet and a human rights advocacy organization in both English and Arabic. It focuses on the intersection of human rights and journalism, with particular attention to the Middle East and its diaspora in Canada. Over the past year, Redword has carried out work in 11 different countries, including Canada, the United States, Egypt, Palestine, Syria, Lebanon, and Sudan. It contributed to the resettlement of 3 at-risk journalists. It provided urgent support and consultations to 16 journalists and human rights defenders. It produced reports and articles covering human rights issues in Canada, Egypt, Palestine, Lebanon, Tunisia, and Sudan. It participated in 35 advocacy campaigns, delivered a speech on Coptic minorities at the United Nations. From Egypt's prisons to Canada, Mustafa Al-Asr's journey is guided by a continued commitment to defending human rights and freedom of expression, culminating the founding of Fredward.
Please welcome to the stage Mustafa Al-Azhar and presenting this certificate. We have FSC board member Tom Howell with Rachel Pulfer, president of Journalists for Human Rights, and Samia Madwar, senior editor at The Walrus. Congratulations. And now we'll have a look at the work of our second recipient.
In a time when many domestic media outlets in Afghanistan are confronted with restrictions and censorship, media organizations outside the country are striving to preserve and amplify the voice of the people. Mauj TV is an independent media network established in Canada, serving Afghan communities both nationwide and globally. Notably, a significant number of its team members are journalists living in exile. Mauj TV officially began its work in 2024, led by one of Afghanistan's most accomplished women, Malalai Halimi, demonstrating that the voice of women will never be silenced. Through its satellite broadcasting, Mauj reaches audiences across Afghanistan and around the world, connecting with millions of viewers. Mauj TV broadcasts in Dari, Pashto, and English. With the establishment of Mauj Global TV in Canada, the network has cultivated a distinctive platform, offering engaging entertainment programs, cultural dialogues, live music, and exclusive concerts. Among its programs, Voice of the People holds a prominent place. This talk show, delivered in a clear and approachable style, explores pressing social, political, and cultural issues. Morning Mauj, a voice that accompanies audiences each morning, sharing stories of life, resilience, and hope. Mauj TV is not merely a media outlet. It's a platform for freedom of speech and democracy. Mauj, always with you.
Please welcome to the stage the team from Mauj TV, and presenting their Free Speech Certificate of Recognition, welcome back Brent Jolly from the Canadian Association of Journalists and Jordan McInnes from JHR. And now our final recipient.
Susina Shanafi. I'm the co-producer of Addis Kenyat Television. This is Gazahin Makunnen.
Okay, thank you, Sosi. We established this media, New Perspective, Addis Kenyat Media, originally as a newspaper, a monthly newspaper for Ethiopian and Eritrean community who lives in Ontario. And over the years, we developed the other media outlets, including radio and now television.
New Perspective TV and Media Service marks 8 years of amplifying voices that are too often unheard. Founded by individuals who came from an oppressive regime, the organization is rooted in a lived understanding of restricted expression and the value of free speech. Arriving at a democracy provided safety, opportunity, and the ability to speak openly, but it also introduced new challenges. Over the years, New Perspective has grown into both an exile media platform and a local community outlet committed to informing, empowering, and connecting communities shaped by suppression, displacement, and marginalization. Through storytelling, reporting, and cultural programming, it has created a vital space for sharing experiences, preserving identity, and engaging with broader society. Sustaining this work, however, has not been easy. Like many community-focused media organizations, it faces limited resources, funding barriers, and competition from larger established networks. Building trust within communities affected by trauma and past censorship remains an ongoing effort, while operating in exile requires maintaining credibility and relevance across both local and international audiences. Despite these pressures, New Perspective continue to stand as a testament to the importance of independent, community-driven media. Its journey underscores that democracy alone does not guarantee equal access to voice or visibility, and that meaningful support, financial, institutional, and social is essential to ensure underrepresented communities are seen, heard, and understood.
Welcome to the stage, Gazahin Makunnen and Susina Shanafi, presenting their certificate, FSC board member Chris Hallett and Michelle Shepard, award-winning journalist, filmmaker, and co-president of the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression. Congratulations once again to all of our recipients this evening. What we have seen tonight is what press freedom looks like when it refuses to give up. Press freedom doesn't defend itself, it takes people. And the people in this room are part of the answer. The journalists on stage are proof of what's possible when you refuse to give up. Before we move into our networking reception, I want to extend enormous thanks to two people without whom tonight would not exist. Najib Asil and Soraya Amiri are the founders and driving forces behind the Free Speech Center. We value their vision, their persistence, and their commitment to this community. If tonight has moved you to support the work of the Free Speech Center, there's a slide on the screen with a QR code. You can scan it to donate. Every contribution helps the center continue building this community and doing what you've seen here tonight. Thank you also to every person in this room for showing up, for listening, and for being part of these conversations. I invite you now to please join us for a networking reception. Introduce yourselves to the journalists you've heard from. This is how it starts, and this is how it continues. On behalf of the Free Speech Center, thank you and good night.